So the second myth I want to talk about, want to challenge, is that you can scare young people out of being involved in crime. And this is something that wider research challenges on a large scale, that a focus on penal consequences or on the punishment that might come if you engage in crime doesn't work. And the young people and the practitioners in my research overwhelmingly felt the same and suggested that focusing on the impact on their families might be more effective. So the young people in particular were particularly strong on this. There was a lot of particulars there. So the young people were really strong on this. Some of the practitioners did suggest some of the kind of interventions that focus on showing young people the consequences of crime in terms of punishment and penal consequences, but other practitioners challenged that. And the young people said that focusing on their families was likely for them to have a much bigger impact than focusing on penal consequences. So focusing, for example, on the impact on their mum or their younger siblings when talking to young people about the consequences of becoming involved in crime. Several of the young offenders we spoke to who had engaged in drug running and other offences told us that if they'd just known the impact that their involvement would have on their mum, for example, that they might have thought twice. Another young person spoke about the impact when his younger brother started to become involved as well, and how that was a real critical moment for him in wanting to get out of that life and get his brother out of that life as well. For the practitioners, they talked about these things as well. For example, social workers talking about the impact of siblings being taken into care because of the house being considered an unsafe environment, particularly where drugs or weapons might have been found in the home. The mental health impacts on parents or the wider family were also mentioned. And for the young people who weren't yet involved in organised crime but who might be considered at risk or might be considered target group for the type of interventions that might prevent that, they told us quite strongly that the types of resources that were impactful for them were the ones where you saw the impact on other people, not on the person. So rather than focusing on you will go to prison if you become involved in this, they were saying if somebody gets hurt, a friend or family member gets hurt, again reinforcing the idea that impact on families is more powerful than on the penal consequences that the young people might face. So this kind of supports the idea that we maybe need supportive, not punitive interventions when we work with young people around their engagement with crime, that we need to be able to work with them around thinking about what the impact it might be on the people that they love and care about, on their lives and families. And many of the young people told us that actually supporting their families was part of the reason that they might have become involved in certain things in the first place. And that leads on to the third myth. With the third myth that I want to challenge today being that young people who commit crime do it because they are greedy and lazy. And there's a dominant assumption out there that young people who commit crime just can't be bothered to get a proper job, or they just want easy money, fast money, quick. And actually a lot of the young people were able to talk about how elusive other opportunities felt, how far away employment felt. Maybe they felt they had no real chance to get a job or a better opportunity. So when they could get a bit of money quick, it felt like at times they could help out mum or the family or get a bit of money to buy food. So it can feel like the only option rather than the easy option. So when we think about responses to young people's engagement in crime, we need to not be thinking about just telling them not to do it or telling them that they'll get a criminal record and never get a job, because actually they might feel like they're not going to get a job anyway. And we need to be working with them to identify more positive alternatives, especially where they feel like those positive alternatives are few and far between. For the young people who had been involved in crime but managed to get out of it, they often talked about the combination of what seemed like three key factors that supported them to get out of crime. And that the first of those things was a critical moment. So I mentioned the young person whose brother had got involved. For another young person, it was having a baby. So they needed a critical moment that caused them to stop and reflect on what was going on. They needed this second element was the supportive intervention from a trusted professional who could work with them over time. So they talked about youth workers or youth offending workers who'd been able to work with them over quite a long period of time, offer them support and mentoring and help them to improve their lives and find better options and opportunities, or even in some cases to help them to move areas completely. And then the third thing that they seemed to need was a positive alternative opportunity. And for some of them that was something quite small, like becoming involved in a music project as part of their youth offending programme, in which they might do things like make an album or go on a tour. Quite a positive opportunity for them to channel their feelings and experiences. There was the young woman who had the baby. For her, that acted as a positive alternative thing to focus on. And for others, they talked about jobs or training or positive career opportunities being the possibility that they needed. One young person talked about how his plans were to channel his sales skills into selling leggings on the market, for example. But the young people need the support so that when those options and opportunities that they try out either don't work or that they need a little help or support with, they need the professionals around to support them with that.